are what we're launching here. So, and definitely welcome. This is a community movement. So looking for collaborations and partnerships wherever and however possible to support families. So I'm going to go through just a kind of a short slide presentation just to talk a little bit about the program and what it's about, and then save a significant amount of time at the end for questions and dialogue around kind of what that partnership might look like. So my name is Jessica Ruhwein. I joined Lutheran Community Services Northwest in September. And for those of you who don't know, LCS is a very large regional organization. They actually have over 500 employees. It's a nonprofit that focuses on a variety of kind of human services. And so depending on the area, we have 8 district offices throughout Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And this coming year will be 100 years old. It was founded by the Lutherans long ago and has since kind of transformed into more kind of full kind of array of mental health. Y is over in Washington. Our counterpart here is Yes. So a lot of kind of that mental health work, do sex trafficking, senior services, a lot of dementia support, refugee and immigration resettlement, and family and children support. So I came on in September, and I was just tasked with trying to figure out, what kind of service we were going to provide here, and so how could I partner and align with the amazing organizations and programs that already existed. So that was kind of my role, and I wanted to throw in, just because of our current climate we're in, that we promote equity and inclusion and diversity in all aspects of our work. And so we just welcome all. So what we landed on was, after a kind of a 3 to 5 month assessment, was a program called Safe Families for Children. So this is actually, it was founded in 2003 in Chicago, Illinois. And there are now 120 chapters of Safe Families across the United States in 70 cities, and it's now international as well. And so it's a volunteer-driven movement to support families in crisis that is professionally supported. So kind of Lutheran Community Services in the background provides them, does a lot of that, the not so fun administrative support work, unless you love administrative work. And and the focus is serving parents in crisis. So it's an upstream kind of prevention model that we work with to provide safe housing for children, mentorship for families, and strengthening of parents so that we can ultimately reunite children with their families. So there was not a chapter here in Idaho, and they were looking to bring one. So it was very just serendipitous to be able to kind of launch Safe Families. So we launched that in March, and we all know the timing. So the mission for the Safe Families program is to host vulnerable children and create extended family-like support for families in crisis through a community of compassionate volunteers. So ultimately, the goal is to keep children safe and loved on and protected while we're supporting their parents, and ultimately trying to reunite the family if and whenever appropriate. The desired outcomes are to prevent child abuse and neglect. We know that if families are in a crisis situation or dealing with extreme stress, that it can be really hard to care for your children in the way that you would like to. And we're hoping, in Oregon, we actually have a contract with DHS to track how many children we're deflecting from the foster care system. So the hope is to divert families at risk of entering the child welfare system where appropriate, and then to really wrap support around those families to strengthen, stabilize, and support them so that they're in a better place to care for their children and more secure. I threw in this little a bit here about kind of the need, and I don't need to tell you all. You guys are very familiar with this. I think even before COVID, we had 40% of our households that couldn't afford kind of the basic needs. So I think I think we're all kind of waiting to see what's going to happen as this continues to unfold. We have 1 in 5 children in Idaho live in a family where their income is below the federal poverty level. This one, I have to move. It's funny, on my videos in front of the the PowerPoint. I thought this was a really interesting statistic. Just 10 years ago, our population said they had no one in whom they could confide. Now that is up to 25%. So we're dealing with a population that is much more isolated than it has in the past. And so a lot of us who typically rely on friends, sisters, aunts, uncles for support, a lot of our families no longer have that. So we have a lot of isolated families. And then, child welfare is a great support and necessity for some families. They're dealing often with kind of a blatant abuse and neglect. And so if you're in a crisis situation, but you haven't experienced that, there's not a ton of resources for families to get them back on their feet. Especially, I got a call from a mom the other day living in her car with her 2 and 4-year-old. And she's trying to find a home, she's trying to find a job, but she also has her kids with her. And so it's like, that's a perfect situation where was a loving, caring mom, but in a really bad situation and really needed some additional support to be able to kind of make ends meet. And then in 2019, there were 23,000 calls to calls of concern to child welfare. And from what I can tell on statistics, that we intervene on about the child welfare intervenes about 32% of the time, so that they have identified that there's a need to step in on those cases. But I think that means we have a lot of families out there that are seeking support, but that don't necessarily have it. And I thought this was a really great statistic from the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect, is that the lack of help from extended family and friends and the ineffective use of informal supports are possibly the most important predictors of child abuse. And I thought the panel that we had, I don't know if anybody participated in the ICTX conference, and the panel with kind of the parents in crisis and asking kind of what is needed. It wasn't so much the resources, it was really about the shame, the confidence, and the guidance that kind of has to go along with trying to get yourself back on your feet. So that's really what's unique to this program. So who are those families? They're just families. It could be a family's parenting alone. You just lack that family support I talked about. Could be escaping domestic violence, hospitalization. We've got a mom out in Baker City who has to go in for cancer treatments. When she shows up with her children and there's nobody to watch her children, then there is no option for that family other than to call Child Protective Services. So she uses Safe Families for Children to host her children overnight while she has her cancer treatment. So you can see this list: housing loss, a job loss, family emergencies, substance abuse. I mean, there's a whole array of reasons why a family might need support. Go ahead. It's important to note that we as an agency are not placing children in homes. The parents are choosing to place their children voluntarily. We are simply helping with the screening and the support and the connections to make that happen, and hopefully do it in a safe way. And the parents retain full custody of their children throughout the placement. So, if you can just imagine, if a crisis hits, imagine if it wasn't shameful to ask for help, and that your safety net is a neighbor or families helping families, that you didn't have to qualify for any kind of care, and that your children could be protected without the fear of losing them, without the fear of them being taken. So that's kind of the concept of safe families. So how does it work? We love on kids, we connect parents, children are hosted by host families temporarily, and then we wrap around volunteer teams around the parents to try to figure out what they need to get connected. And so the parents' biggest problem is social isolation. And one of our biggest resources in our community is our churches, our faith communities. They're well connected, they're well resourced, really well networked, and they have access to amazing community supports. And so we, Safe Families for Children is a faith-based movement that taps into the Safe Families Church. And so a church will take this on as their ministry. They raise their hand, they say, we want to become a Safe Families Church. And then we kind of set up, you can kind of see this circle of support. We set up, you have a family in crisis, and you have one family that raises their hand to be the host family. That's not right for all families. Some families really love that place, and other families might want to step in and provide resources, for example, diapers, cribs, kind of the meals to the family that is hosting. It's tough to take in kids and then continue to supply meals every single 3 times a day. We have a family coach who is a more skilled volunteer position, but that coach is facilitating the relationship between the host family and the family in crisis, as well as kind of that wraparound support. So there's kind of multiple layers on this, but that is actually really intentional because that also means there's more touch points on the child, there's more touch points on the family, and that just creates more safety for everybody connected, and it also creates community, which is the intent of this. So if a family raises their hand and says they want to be the host family, they open their heart and their home for a short period of time. The amount of time is determined by the family, not by us. So they say, my capacity is 2 weeks. My capacity is 2 months. My capacity is 1 night a month. They can determine what that is. 70% of our children that are hosted in our chapters are under 6 years old. So they're little ones. And so then we do an application. We do the same, kind of similar to foster homes in that we go into homes, we do a full check and a screening, and we do a home study. And then they have to go through an online training in order to be qualified as a host family. It's interesting, the typical stay across the nation is 35 days for a child. So, but it can be as little as 24 hours, like that family in Baker. This is what we hear of the benefits that those who open their homes is that when you welcome in families and really walk alongside families in crisis, that you start to have lighter hold of your own possessions. It can really give purpose and connection to your own family. You get to observe those small daily miracles, and it really gives an opportunity for members of congregations to live out their faith. And so it's this is the hard stuff. And so it's really kind of being able to jump in and commit to the hard part of walking with families. And it's an alternative lifestyle to consumption, media gratification, unrelenting busyness. We're kind of focused in our world, and when you get to see someone else's world, it can change your perspective. So this is just reflections from our families who are participated. To date, we've had 50,000 postings for safe families across the nation, and most of those, we've not had one incident so far. Knock on wood, and 94% of families have been reunited. So it's really remarkable, the success rate that Safe Families has had across the nation. And these are just a few quotes I threw in. And we have a family out in Oregon. She's hosted 21 children. And she just, she says, I get more out of Safe Families than any of the children do. We maintain ongoing relationships with these struggling families throughout their lives. And these relationships are so special to me and my whole family, which is really the heart and soul of this, is that we're trying to build relationships. It's not a one-off. It's trying to allow connection and to reduce social isolation. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the other roles and then open it up to questions and thoughts from you all in terms of how we operate. So I mentioned the family coach. That's a little bit more of a skilled volunteer. And that volunteer is really kind of facilitating the relationships. They're helping the parents stay connected to their children throughout the hosting. So we want to really minimize the trauma that children and parents experience. So we set up video, if appropriate, set up video calls with the family every single evening. If they can meet, we can have play dates in the parks. A lot of the families actually end up inviting the parents in to have dinner and into their home. Whether they choose to do that is completely up to the host family. It is not required by any means. Some feel comfortable in doing so and some don't. And if they don't, then we encourage kind of common meeting places and outside in the park and in areas. But what we really want to do is just keep the children connected with their parents and build up that relationship. Then we have a group of volunteers that are resource friends, and those resource friends are really about the stuff. The goods, the services, trying, whether it's getting your car fixed, whether it's getting haircuts, needing clothing and diapers. Most of our kids show up with very, very little. And so that's just a really important component of making sure that everyone's outfitted, both the parents in crisis in terms of them stabilizing, as well as the host family. And then we have the family friends. And it is really as simple as that. It's what any friend would do. You check in, you see what's needed, you ask them how they're doing, provide guidance and mentorship from your own experiences. And then maybe some babysitting. You know, the host family needs to go out and have a break themselves. So babysitting the kiddos, providing meals, and prayer or moral boost, or all aspects of just being a good friend. And then, you know, here's the Safe Families Church. It's just the church, as I mentioned, this is the church's ministry, and we support their work. And so it's really an opportunity for them to, in ancient hospitality, the term hospitality was the love of a stranger. So we are really opening our homes and going kind of back to the biblical hospitality of loving a stranger and welcoming them into our homes in a way that is, you know, hopefully finding stability. And where do parents come from? They come from all over. Let's see. Sorry, I'm getting a note for an annotation there, Roger. I wasn't sure what that was about. So anyways, parents come from all over. They can self-refer. I've gotten phone calls here in the office, just parents saying, hey, I need support. You know, school counselors, churches, homeless centers, domestic violence centers. I mean, you name it. It's really, this is completely voluntary. Parents are, you know, who seek support or think we think this would be helpful. That's, you know, that this is a program in place that hopefully, you know, provides the type of support that they need. And so what is Safe Families? Ultimately, what it does is it gives parents the space and the time to get back on their feet. We hope to make that happen as quickly as possible. It gives a little bit of a break from the daily pressures, and then help with problem solving. So just being able to manage kind of the daily challenges of making decisions and trying to figure out where to go next, as we all deal with on a daily basis. And then building up that social connection and resource network. That's really, really the heart and soul of this, is building those relationships. This is not transactional. There's no compensation. There's no compensation for any of the families. This is all about relations. And then the hospitality, the love of a stranger. And then our impact, you can kind of see, I mentioned that we have 50,000 hostings. We have 4,500 churches involved, and then a 94% reunification rate. It's not always possible. Sometimes, you know, it's not appropriate, but but overall the success rate is phenomenal. And then if possible, we work with other family members to find placements. And then I'm going to pause there and show you guys a 2-minute video, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. All right, so let's see if I can do this. I have to stop sharing this, and then I'm going to reshare my video screen with you guys and optimize it here.
You can do it.
Woohoo! All right, can you guys see that?
My name's Clarissa. I grew up in the foster system because my mother was a drug addict.
Can you guys hear that? Okay, awesome.
In 2008, I was sent to jail for about a week. I'd never been in trouble before, and when it happened, it's just like I was just recently divorced and trying to get a job and trying to take care of my kids, and you know, it kind of started this spiral of emotional chaos. I didn't have a job. I now had an arrest record. I was, charges were pending, and my kids were in the foster care system. There wasn't enough, antidepressant drugs to help me, come out of that at all.
When she first came and dropped off Noah, we met in a central meeting place. We allowed Noah to play a little bit with our children and introducing Clarissa to myself, introducing us, and that Noah was going to be coming and staying with us for a little while until Clarissa was able to regroup and get her family back on her feet.
They made it so easy that I felt guilty. And it wasn't only for my children, they offered me help too, you know, someone to talk to, somebody that would listen to me and not judge me.
And how do we love our neighbors? It's not just the people next door, it's not just within our own community, but it's people, all people, everywhere. I would encourage anyone to be a host for Safe Families for Children, to be able to come alongside these families who are in crisis, who need someone, and simply just to love on them.
Thank you, Safe Families for Children. You kept my family together.
All right. Let's see if I can go back to sharing the PowerPoint here. All right, hopefully you guys can see that again. All right. There's a lot of those out there, those videos from different chapters. Those stories are, if you want to just really get choked up, and they're really powerful and really amazing in terms of how it all, unfolds. So anyways, we're launching it here. We got approval from Department of Health and Welfare to move forward last week, actually, because there was no code under which we could operate. So we're really excited to be working with them. And we invite anyone to come alongside and join in this effort. And so we have 3 pilot churches that are looking at launching this. And we're building a volunteer team and a leadership team, and we need people to come on board. So anyways, that's it in a nutshell. And I welcome you all to ask questions or, have a discussion around what you think would be really great for our communities.
How do you, working in it, this is kind of the child welfare space, the CPS space normally. How have you been greeted, in relationship to, this is a good diversion from the CPS, and like you say, there's no code. I guess I maybe I didn't quite understand that aspect of it. Obviously, if it's voluntary, how do we? I guess it's like this is great. And trying to figure out how, I guess I'm just trying to think how does CPS think about how this plays into their role?
Yeah,
not that they want to take kids out of the house. I mean, not that they want to remove kids either, but I'm just saying, how does it play out?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I just started by reaching out and just meeting with folks. I can say there was nothing but just the warmest of welcome for the most part, saying we really would love to see this here, that anything we can do to kind of stop, prevent the kids entering foster care in the first place, this would be a huge benefit, because I think they're just overwhelmed, right now with the number of kiddos in that situation. And because we have that relationship in other states and this in history, and because it's a research-based model, I think they've been really excited to see it. The biggest challenge was that code piece, is that in Idaho, every state's different. And in Idaho, there's only removal of children and parents lose custody. There's no other option for families under our particular code that's written here. So we'll actually be working with Department of Health and Welfare and some senators to pass legislation this fall that would actually allow it. And we have permission now to operate, but it would be better if we could actually kind of put it into legislation so that we could set it up, for in perpetuity. So we're really excited. We'll be starting in Canyon County. just because the need there is so great initially. And we really look forward to that partnership and working with them on referrals. But that's really up to each region in terms of whether or not they would like to work with us or not. So we'll see. Any other questions?
I do have a question. I might have a case that I've been working on. Mother's kind of isolated, and the boy, he's probably about 16 or so. He has sustained a brain injury when he was 3 days old, and significant. One of my areas of specialty is certified brain injury specialist, so I understand a lot about how they connected with me. But she has a need for respite, things like that. Is that kind of the avenue that we're talking about here? One of the avenues?
Yeah, it can be for sure. So if you need sometimes just need a break.
Instead of, because I mean, they've talked about the Hayes House, which is another area of Idaho Youth Branch, but we have specific qualifications that are necessary in order for a youth to be admitted there, and if they're violent or anything else like that, they don't qualify. Do you guys have those as well, or?
Well, it's Safe Family. I'll say that Safe Families is not set up to handle. The parents are not in a situation to handle behavioral issues or extreme. Our families are not. They receive training to be host families. But if it is if there's some kind of a behavioral issue or a mental health issue, our families probably would not be appropriate for that. It's not. What's different about this program is that it's the parents raising their hands for help as opposed to the kids' behaviors that are triggering the red flags or the help. And so, it's typically that the parents seek the support, not that there's some type of behavioral issue from, that the children are exhibiting. So that would just have to be a discussion that we would have about whether or not we have a skilled family that is in that position. But in general, we're not really appropriate for, for issues that are probably a little bit more complex or needing more attention.
I don't know if you saw the chat questions, but Sydney asks, well, first she says, this is such beautiful work, Jessica, an awesome goal. And then she asks a question. I'm curious what your training for the families includes, and do you include any training on cultural humility? How do you help your volunteer families release slippery feelings of superiority? That's a cool question.
That's a great question and a constant challenge. So the Safe Families National, which is out of Chicago, they provide all of the online training for all of our volunteers. And there's different levels, right? So if you're a host family versus a family friend, resource friend, you do different levels of training and the intensity of the training. And that is free and available for all of our volunteers. But I think that there's greatly a need, and we'll need to continue to figure out how to support and refine kind of that cultural humility piece. That is part of it. We do receive a lot of support from our pastors. The fact that this is a faith-based, and so kind of having that pastoral intervention in terms of how we kind of create that equality is really important and helpful. But that's a really unique piece, and one that I'm hoping that once we have our host families up, we'll be able to actually create some seminars and some workshops around, how to make sure that we're not being judgmental, and how do we come from a strength-based place, which we're all learning to be better at. So that's pending, and we're reaching out to family advocates that do the strengthening classes, and YCAP with their resiliency program, and we're trying to find partnerships so volunteers can actually participate in their programs as well, so that they can get better at their own kind of experience and skills. If you have ideas, I welcome them, because I think it's a really tough one. It's one that we have to be really sensitive to.
Yeah. So this is interfaith project. So how, right? I mean, so it's whatever house of worship or whatever would be interested in being involved. Um, how has the reception been so far? I know you're fairly early in this game, but
Yeah, it's been tough because it happened right in March when COVID hit. And so we started out doing what we call faith forums, where we go into the church communities and share about what this ministry looks like and see if they're in a place that they would want to actually take it on. It's a lift. And so figuring out, do they have a ministry team in place? What are they currently doing? Do they want, so a lot of, we kind of share what this is, what support we can provide, and then also the expectations from the faith community. It doesn't actually, so yeah, we're when the congregation stopped meeting, it changed our work. So we've been meeting with them via Zoom. I have more churches right now that have stated their interest in wanting to pilot this than we have capacity to support. So that's a really good thing. It's going to be, how we support the churches, especially with the social distancing, is going to be challenging as we continue to roll this out.
So I'll let Sydney finish her statement. She said, absolutely. Happy to hear you're on your radar. Such a challenging piece of any helping work. Okay. So she thanks you for that work. Yeah, for sure. And then Justin asked a question. Okay. Although he's not shy, so I don't know why he's putting in chat, but I heard you say,
well, I thought about it and I didn't want to lose it. So,
okay.
I heard you say research-based was something that foundation upon which your program is based, and then I heard you say faith-based.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confused because in my understanding, those are two completely different things.
So we're in the final stages of becoming evidence-based, Safe Families for Children. We're on the California evidence-based listing in California.
Yeah.
We're trying to get added to the federal listing of prevention models. They required additional evidence, and we're actually getting that out of Illinois right now. So the hope is that we'll actually get to the point where we'll be able to receive state funds through kind of 4E prevention funds and whatnot. So we're they're in the final stages of that, and I believe they expect it by the end of this year. In terms of it being faith-based, the model is faith-based, and that it's a community service movement that where the faith community is coordinating and leading the volunteers. So we find our volunteers and they help coordinate. We all know how much energy volunteers are. It's beautiful to have all the volunteers. It's really hard to coordinate. And so they're tapping into their community network, and they also know their families really well. So it's being able to have kind of a reference for families that want to host and then are surrounded by the community, just create a safer place for children. So that's what we mean by faith-based, is that the church is the ministry of the churches.
I wonder if the language is, because that language is kind of loaded, actually, faith-based. And I wonder whether you wouldn't be better to say research-based and based in faith communities, because I know that, because I think that was your distinction, right, Justin, was the idea that it was faith-based, because we have this, I know we've had this ongoing struggle around faith healing and faith-based, what we call faith-based religious exemptions or exemptions from our from some of the child abuse statutes. So we're kind of like, oh, that language is a little bit loaded.
Yeah, and nobody has to be of any particular denomination, or you could be unchurched. We ask that you serve under the model of a whoever's piloting it. So we actually have had conversations with a couple nonprofits here that said, well, what if we wanted to pilot it? And we said, yeah, that'd be great. We need an umbrella to be able to kind of make sure that there's that coordination for the volunteers and for the outreach. It works really, really well in faith communities. And that's where it's just the way they're set up. It's their faith, it's their networks, and it becomes theirs, which is really what it's about. But you're right, it's a little that I appreciate that suggestion, and one I'll take on because it can get complicated.
I know that some of the folks on the phone are, or at least a couple of folks on the phone are not Treasure Valley based. Is Lutheran Community Services looking to expand statewide, or just do you see yourself mostly working in Treasure Valley? Well, obviously for now, but does this model, is this model transferable? Say I know Sydney's in Coeur d'Alene, so.
Yeah, so a chapter just started up North Idaho called Idaho, up in out of Sandpoint up there. They launched at the same time we did. Anybody that wants to start a chapter can. So there's an application process. It's pretty rigorous. You have to have what they call an implementing agency. So that it could be a church, but it could be a nonprofit organization. LCS, Lutheran Community Services, was already running this over in Oregon. So we have 5-year history of knowing what it took to kind of launch this. So we thought it was a really great to be able to kind of use our sister site to launch one here. But say if you're in Eastern Idaho and you want to become a chapter of Safe Families, you can launch one on your own. You can become an affiliate of ours, and we work together. I don't know if there's other avenues, but those are the two that I'm aware of. And if you wanted to, you would just go to Safe Families National in Chicago and state your interest in launching a chapter.
I don't know if this is too techie a question. It may only be interesting to me. I hope not. But the implementation of the Family First Prevention Services Act. I mean, a lot of that is really focused on prevention of children entering the foster care system. I mean, that's its core mission, and this seems like it fits in there. Do you know at all if Safe Families is being vetted as a program that can be paid for under Family First, or is that maybe a new concept for you? I don't know.
No, we've had those. I've been having those conversations with the Department of Health and Welfare. As far as I know so far, maybe you guys know more.
I can tell that question was techie. I just lost 2 people on it.
And maybe Justin, you might know more about this than I do. So my understanding is that if you're not, so there's a list, a federal list, right, of which programs that states can then apply those funds for. That list is very, very small right now. I believe there's 12 programs on it. And so if your state doesn't have a nonprofit or a, program of service currently available, it's very hard to then attribute those funds to anything else. So we are working on getting on that list, but it is not an easy process. It's super difficult. So there really isn't there's just not a whole lot here in Idaho that they could put those funds towards that's on that federal list.
Mostly the 2 home visiting programs, and then all the QTRPs, which Youth Ranch is one of those, I believe. You just have to increase the quality, or you have to be accredited. So I don't know if it increases quality or just accreditation, but whatever it is, it has to be accredited to meet their criteria. So it's a big old mess. But if it can happen, it could be huge too. I mean, that's opportunities to really do some bigger, better things. It at least moves us upstream some and creates, the federal, I think, creates some opportunities for things like this, like Safe Families, because I think it really, home visiting is one option, but I don't think it can't be the only thing that we're doing in that space.
Yeah, and
it shouldn't be the only thing we're doing in that space.
Yeah, completely agree. We do have a contract in Oregon. We're contracted with DHS to do Safe Families, so we actually they get direct funding. And they're together trying to track the deflection rate. So that's has a lot of potential. But Oregon has relief nurseries, and they have things we just don't have. So we'll see if we can get there.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Looks like I might have to jump off, guys.
Okay, well, it's probably, well, it's kind of down to the hardcore here. So maybe we should say goodbye. Unless Sydney, you have anything? Like to add anything? Your mic is open. You could talk. No, thank you. So much for your presentation. Thank you so much for your presentation. All right. Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate your
Good to see you again, Roger.
appreciate your time. This is really interesting. We'll put this out so that people will know it's out. More people will get a chance to see what you're doing and look forward to what happens in the future.
Fantastic. Maybe I can get that tour of the boys' home sometime when
You got to do it on a golf cart. It is the best ever.
It is. It is a lot of
I'll
fun.
bring my golf clubs.
Hey, I would join you.
Isn't it true though? Isn't it true that there's just one hole left?